At this point on this channel, I feel like North Wales and aircraft from the Second World War are quite closely linked. We've explored some crash sites together, we've explored some grave sites together, and today we're going to be exploring some more grave sites here on the Great Orme's Head Cemetery. And these stories are full of bravery, courage, and unfortunately, tragedy. So stick around and let's find out their stories. Yes, hello and welcome back to the Echoes from the Past YouTube channel, and you join me again once again exploring here in North Wales. And today we're at the Great Orme's Head Cemetery in Llandudno in Carnarvonshire. So where the cemetery is on top of the Great Orme. It used to be a mine way back when, and more recently it's a bit of a tourist attraction. But some history behind this cemetery, the Great Orme's Head, is that in the 1890s space was running out in Llandudno's other two cemeteries, so the council started scouting for land where would be best. And they settled on ground opposite Llandudno's churchyard, which was already a cemetery, and they thought, well, there's land there, we might as well just add on and use that. It was officially opened in 1903, and similar to the one in Wrexham that I went to in a recent video, and if you haven't seen that video, you can check it out here or there. It's a great video, very historic site, and this is also a historic site because after 1903, obviously then came the First World War and then the Second World War. And in total there are 36 World War I and World War II graves in the Great Orme Heads Cemetery. So that's a bit of history about the cemetery, and today we're going to highlight two stories from Commonwealth graves, obviously. And I first heard these stories when I attended a walk and talk on the War Graves Week from Adrian, who owns the Homefront Museum. Again, I did a video there, did a little bit of an interview with him, so go check that out as well. And when I first heard one of these stories, it was an amazing story, and I thought I have to research that more and basically tell it to all of you guys so more people know about it, because it's an incredible story. So let's go find that gentleman first. Here is the grave of William Ernest Williams, and we're going to be delving into his story today, and it involves Milan, a Lancaster bomber, and bravery. So here is the grave of William Ernest Williams, like I said. He was known as Bill, and he was born on the 6th of October 1909 in Birmingham, actually. So he's not originally from Llandudno, but he moved here because after leaving education, he worked for furnishers, Dickinson & Sons in Llandudno. So a bit like myself, moved here for a job, ended up settling down because in 1933 he married Ruby Huxley in Conwy, and they also went on to have a daughter. Now, on the outbreak of war in 1941, William, or Bill, joined the RAF and trained in America, actually, as a lot of pilots did. It was obviously safer for them to train over there with the less threat of war, of being bombed and blitzed out. So he's trained in the USA. He qualified as an observer and commenced flying operations with Coastal Command, actually, which is often an overlooked part of the war sometimes. We think of the sorties into Europe and the Blitz, and then Coastal Command. They did a very important job of protecting us from imminent invasion at one point. And then after that, in September of 1942, William was posted to 101 Squadron at RAF Stradisol, Suffolk, via 10 OTU flying on Wellingtons. So again, he's kind of moving up the ranks. He's gone from Coastal Command and now he's moving through the ranks. He's gone to Wellingtons, and he will eventually end up on Lancasters, because in October 1942, 101 Squadron converted to the Lancaster and moved to RAF Home on Spalding Moor up in Yorkshire. And then finally, so he's gone through his training, he's learned the Wellingtons, and now he's converted to Lancasters and he's learned that aircraft. And in January of 1943, William received his commission. And if you can see there on his grave, he has the words, or the letters, sorry, CGM after his name, and that is the Conspicuous Gallantry Medal. And this is the story I was alluding to before that involves a bombing raid over Milan, and this is an incredible story. This was Valentine's Day, 14th February 1943, and it involved a crew of Pilot Officer Gates, Flight Sergeant Dove, and Sergeants Williams, Bain, and Airy were members of the crew, captained by Sergeant Hazard, which was detailed to attack Milan. And the bombing raid was successful. This mission went off as planned. And this mission was Bomber Command dispatched 142 Lancasters from numbers 1, 5 and 8 groups to bomb the northern Italian city of Milan. Now the bombers converged on Milan, concentrating the attack into the shortest possible space of time to overwhelm the defences. So this is helping the Allied advance through Italy. Obviously this is before D-Day. We've already got a bit of a toehold in Italy at this point in the war, but we need a stronger force. We need to push the Germans and the Italians out to then make sure that the cross-channel invasion into France would definitely work in 1944. So the mission itself dropped 110 tons of high explosive bombs and 166 tons of incendiaries, and these were dropped on targets such as factories and railway yards. So kind of a double-pronged attack of you targeting infrastructure to cripple the war production, and then railway yards to stop the transport of goods to repair the damaged factories and keep the war effort going. Unfortunately, no mission is without risk, basically, and when I read what happened in this next bit, it did make me chuckle a bit. So whilst over the target area, the aircraft that Ernest Williams and his crew were in, Lancaster ED 377, was attacked by an enemy Italian fighter, actually, and this is the bit that made me chuckle. It was a Fiat CR42. Now I'm a massive car lover as well, so you think, Fiats, they're small cars. Well, before then, you know, much like Mercedes-Benz and BMW, they made things for the war as well. So this was only a small Italian night fighter, essentially. This attack happened at close range. And unfortunately, the fire from the Fiat aircraft exploded some incendiary bombs, which had failed to release from Lancaster ED 377. And obviously, it being an incendiary, so an incendiary is basically a fire bomb. It drops, explodes, and then creates a ball of fire. So because that was hitting the bomb bay, this quickly developed into a fire inside the Lancaster itself. And from my research, the line that I found was that the fuselage became a mass of flames. So because of this fire, obviously there's ammunition in the 303 guns that were in the Lancaster to defend it, basically. So ammunition starts cooking off at this point as well. You've got a fire brewing. The crew, they've completed their mission. They just want to get home at this point. And with the fire just starting, they're also trying to fend off the Italian Fiat fighter as well. And Flight Sergeant Dove delivered a devastating burst at the attacker, and it had already actually been hit and engaged by the rear gunner from the Lancaster, and then succeeded in destroying it. Next bit of this story, it all happens very quickly, and these people didn't have a lot of time to react. So Flight Sergeant Dove then went to the assistance of Sergeant Erie, the rear gunner, who had been wounded. And at this point, Sergeant Hazard, the pilot, ordered the crew to abandon the aircraft. But he was then informed that one of his comrades was helpless, and he decided to attempt a forced landing. But again, they're still trying to fight the fire. Pilot Officer Gates assisted Sergeant William Ernest Williams, and Bain to bravely tackle the fire with extinguishers and try and get it under control, because if they just left it, the aircraft would burn and they would all perish. Meanwhile, the aircraft is losing altitude. It was now down to 800 feet, but the crew, involving Williams himself, managed to get the fire subsided, and Sergeant Hazard quickly decided to attempt to fly this badly damaged Lancaster home to the UK. So this is where Williams comes into it more. So he's already started fighting the fire, and now that Sergeant Hazard, the pilot, has decided to fly this Lancaster home, him being the navigator, it was his job to make sure that they had a direct route to safety and the shortest route possible, because the bomber's damaged at this point. You can't be taking detours on the scenic route. You have to fly home as quickly as possible. Because of his skillful navigation and the pilot, Sergeant Hazard, they were able to get the Lancaster back and land at RAF Tangmere. So because of this, fighting the fire and making sure that Lancaster got home safely, this is where the CGM came into it, and the commendation states, in circumstances of the greatest danger, the aircraft crew display courage, fortitude and devotion to duty in keeping with the highest traditions of the Royal Air Force. Which, yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. It really does. You know, it's a determination to know we will get home, we will succeed on this mission, and we will come home in one piece. There's also another brilliant line that I noticed, that when the Lancaster got back, engineers from Avro, the company that made the Lancaster bombers, they noted that and I quote, "It was the severest fire damage ever seen to one of our aircraft, and the skipper has to be praised on his skill in getting it back." So again, that just goes into, it was that teamwork, it was that courage of, no, we're going to fight this fire and we're going to get this Lancaster home to be repaired so then it can carry on fighting the war. A good point to note is that 5 conspicuous gallantry medals in one crew on one operation was an astounding achievement. You know, that didn't happen very often during the war. You know, often in the infantry it would be one soldier, one infantryman that would perform a feat like this. So for the whole crew to be awarded really goes to show that they were a tight-knit group and they knew what they were doing. Unfortunately though, like I said earlier, this story does end in tragedy. And it was only just a month later, on the 20th of March 1943, where William was once again flying with Sergeant Hazard, and this was a test flight of another Lancaster, ED 446. And this being a test flight wasn't meant to be too strenuous, but unfortunately, after a low-level pass at Hornsey Beach, as the aircraft was pulling up, the tail wheel clipped a concrete pillbox, and this caused the aircraft to break up, with the forward section striking the cliffs and the tail section landing on the beach, and unfortunately there were no survivors. And it's just an unfortunate accident. You know, like I said before, we've already covered some crash sites of unfortunate accidents here in North Wales, and although this one didn't take place in North Wales, it still goes to show that even in training, you know, these men were still at risk. But an amazing story nonetheless, and one that I kind of resonate with. William Williams not being from Wales originally, but making it his home and his final resting place. So from a story about one of my favourite aircraft from the Second World War and a bomber crew, to now we are going to discover the story of a Spitfire reconnaissance pilot who also is laid to rest here at the Great Orme's Head Cemetery. Here is the grave of Spitfire pilot R Campbell. And yes, it is a Spitfire reconnaissance story, my favourite aircraft if you don't know by now, so let's dive into his story as well. And yes, here is the final resting place of James Russell Campbell, who was, as it says there, a flying officer and a pilot in the Royal Air Force. Now, I couldn't find much about his background and his story. I wish I could, but unfortunately my research didn't lead me very far. But what I could find was that he was originally from Glasgow, so a bit like William Ernest Williams, he wasn't from Wales originally, but his final resting place is here. And he was actually part of the Royal Air Force Voluntary Reserve 541 Squadron. As a lot of people were during the war, I'm finding as I'm going through the stories that I'm coming across, a lot of people involved in the RAF start off in the Volunteer Reserve as the call to war came, and a lot of men answered the call, and that was their route into the RAF. And as I said before, he was a pilot and he was flying photo reconnaissance Spitfires, and in this instance of his death, he was flying Spitfire PR 11 MB 902, and it's crashed on a transit flight from Benson to St Avel. And this was probably, as the date suggests there, 1st of June 1944, only a few days before D-Day, so I imagine he was very, very heavily involved in lots of photo reconnaissance flights over France during the build-up to D-Day, you know, making sure the intel was up to date so the invasion could go off without a hitch. Now, this incident took place 3 miles northeast of Devizes when emerging from cloud. Now, we've come across stories like this before. The Mosquito wreckage that I went to visit, and the Lancaster Bomber also that I went to visit, that cloud and aircraft don't tend to mix very well. And even though he will have been in a photo reconnaissance Spitfire which could fly higher and faster as it was lighter, clearly even that specific aircraft designed for flying higher and faster was unable to cope with cloud. Because of this, the aircraft was found wrecked on high ground. Now, what I suspect happened is, again, got caught in cloud, didn't know how high he was, and unfortunately crashed. And this is his final resting place. And this is a beautiful piece of Portland stone, actually. It looks relatively new. So, again, an unfortunate accident, but nice to come and pay my respects to James Russell Campbell. So, amazing 2 stories there from here in North Wales again, and obviously aircraft base, so obviously that makes me happy, being an RAF and aircraft nut. So yeah, it's amazing to finally get out and film another video again. So thank you very much for sticking around and bearing with me. Adult life gets in the way sometimes, but yes, plenty more to come, as I always say. So please make sure that you subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell as well, so you don't miss when I eventually upload a new video. So yes, we've got plenty in the pipeline. We have Wavefest. I've got an idea about watching some real life war footage from the war as well, so stick around for that. Thank you very much again, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.